Welcome to Kapachi, a village located near the city of Pripyat and the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. Kapachi was heavily contaminated by radioactive fallout and was evacuated and abandoned shortly after the accident. Kapachi is located about 5 kilometers southwest of the Chernobyl nuclear power station. It's one of the closest settlements to the plant. The area around the village is considered to be a dead zone and not safe for human habitation. Probably around 500 people. Like many other villages in the area, it was a small, rural community made up mostly of farmers and their families. Before the disaster, Kapachi had a typical layout for a small village, featuring several residences, farmsteads, and small administrative buildings. After the accident, the government demolished many of Kapachi's buildings in hopes of reducing the spread of contamination. Did you know that during the cleanup, residential homes were literally buried? The top layer of contaminated soil was removed, surfaces were treated with special decontaminating solutions, and radioactive materials were buried. Cleanup also involved the demolition and disposal of heavily contaminated residential buildings in many villages in the exclusion zone. Approximately 115,000 people were resettled as a result of the Chernobyl disaster. It was necessary to protect people from harmful radiation, and the residents of several contaminated towns and villages were moved to safer areas. The evacuation and resettlement process was carried out by the Soviet government. It had a profound impact on the lives of those affected, and many struggled to adjust to their new circumstances. Despite the challenges, the resettlement was seen as a necessary measure to protect public health and limit the spread of radioactive contamination. Some individuals eventually returned to their homes inside the 30-kilometer exclusion zone. These individuals are known as self-settlers or samoseals. They are easily distinguished by their well-kept homes that stand out from the overgrown and dilapidated houses around them. As of 2016, approximately 180 people lived in the exclusion zone, with 80 of them residing in Chernobyl and 100 in nearby villages. Interestingly, most of the families who returned to the exclusion zone did so in the first year after the disaster. Today, they are mostly elderly and unable to relocate elsewhere. The exclusion zone is also home to approximately 3,000 workers who live on site part-time to provide security, rescue services, and administrative support. The self-settlers are not concerned about radiation levels, and they don't mind the increasing number of tourists visiting the ghost town. They have lived in harmony with nature for a long time and do not complain, despite their isolation from the rest of society. This is only one of many monuments in the exclusion zone commemorating World War II soldiers. However, it is probably the most visited by tourists today. The inscription below reads, "Eternal glory to the heroes who fell in the battles for the freedom and independence of our homeland." The names of Capaci residents who died in combat in World War II, as well as those soldiers who died during the liberation of Capaci in 1943. Capaci Kindergarten is one of the last buildings standing in the village. It was abandoned and remains in a state of disrepair, but is still a popular tourist spot. Most other buildings in the area have been demolished and the ruins buried due to high radioactivity. You can read on the tin plate on the facade that it was built in honor of the 50th anniversary of the Great October Revolution in 1967. Typical preschool curriculum of the era emphasized the development of social skills and physical coordination. The basics of language, mathematics, and natural science were also taught. The curriculum was designed to prepare children for primary school and to instill a love of learning and a sense of civic responsibility. Unsurprisingly, it also aimed to promote Marxist ideology and values such as collectivism and equality. Yes, iodine 131 is especially dangerous for kids. Young thyroids absorb this radioisotope very quickly. Overall, children's cells divide more rapidly than adult cells, increasing the risk of cell damage from radiation exposure. Additionally, children's organs, bones, and tissues are still developing, which also makes them more vulnerable to the effects of radiation. The Emerald Camp was established prior to the Chernobyl disaster and was used by the families of military personnel working at the nearby Duga 2 radar facility. It served as a summer camp for children, providing them with a chance to spend time in a forested, rural environment and participate in recreational activities. The camp continued to operate after the disaster, but the surrounding area was eventually designated as part of the exclusion zone due to high levels of radiation. Unfortunately, it was mostly destroyed by forest fires in 2020. What you see is a virtual reconstruction of the original. The Young Pioneers were a massive Soviet youth organization for children aged 9–14. It was founded in 1922 and was modeled after the Scouts. The aim of the organization was to educate and politically indoctrinate young people in Marxist-Leninist ideology and to promote Soviet patriotism. The Young Pioneers offered young people opportunities for physical, cultural, and social development, encompassing activities such as camping, sports, and arts and crafts. They also participated in political and social events and various ceremonies and parades. Membership was seen as a rite of passage for young people. The organization was dissolved in 1991 with the collapse of the Soviet Union.